Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's training and sensitization on the VAT auto-populated return. We thank you for making the time to be here this afternoon. We thank you for honoring our invite, and we look forward to an engaging and an interactive session with you all. I kindly request another 5 minutes to give additional taxpayers time to join, and then we start at 2:35 sharp. Thank you very much. Perhaps as we await for the 2:35 start time, maybe I can just request our presenter for the day, Madam Grace Gadhia, to just unmute so that we can test her sound and audio and confirm that all is well. Good afternoon, Madam Gadhia.
Good afternoon, Mandy. Am I audible
Excellent.
enough?
Loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you as well.
Madam Susan, good afternoon to you. A very warm welcome from eTeams. Kindly confirm you can hear us.
Yes, I can hear you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Excellent. Thanks, Madam Susan. We'll start in the next 5 minutes.
All right.
Good afternoon, everyone, once again, and a very warm welcome to today's training and sensitization on the VAT auto-populated return for esteemed VAT registered taxpayers. We thank you very much for making the time to be here this afternoon, for honoring our invite, and for showing your commitment to work towards compliance in this tax head. We thank you once again. My name is Mendy Mwangi. I work within the Taxpayer Services Unit within the Domestic Taxes Department within KRA. And today I'm delighted to be joined by a number of my colleagues from both our VAT iTax office, the Business Transformation Office to be specific, Madam Grace Gadhia, as well as Madam Susan Tirimba, who works from our eTeams operations unit. So all your eTeams related queries, we invite you to post them in the chat, and Madam Susan will be able to respond as we progress with the presentation for the day. And towards the very end, she'll also come on to respond to some queries, comments, and concerns. Once again, karibuni sana. And today we don't endeavor to take more than 2 hours. By 4:30 at the latest, we should be out. We'll take you through a run through of the actual return. And then as we take you through a run through of the return, we are alive to some of the challenges that taxpayers are experiencing. And we'll be able to address the challenges as we go through the presentation. But once again, karibuni sana. We look forward to an engaging and an interactive session with you all. Please allow me to invite Madam Susan Tirimba just to start by introducing herself, her unit, and then I'll hand over to Madam Grace Kadia from our Business Transformation Office. Kindly note that this forum is being live streamed on all the KRA social media platforms. So if you'd like, you can share that link with anyone who'd find the contents beneficial. Once again, karibuni sana. Madam Susan, good afternoon to you. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susan Tirimba from Teams Operation Unit. We sit at Checkpoint Towers. I'll be on standby to give an overview about eTeams and to respond to any queries you might be having concerning Teams and eTeams. You're all welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Mandy.
Asante sana. Thanks, Suzanne. And Madam Grace Kadia, our lead presenter for the day, good afternoon to you. I know many of our taxpayers were also with us yesterday and perhaps heard your voice, received your training and your insights, and might have follow-ups. They are here today, and I trust that you'll be able to guide them effectively. Good afternoon to you, and over to you.
Good afternoon, Mandy. Thank you for that introduction. So as you've introduced me, my name is Grace Wanjiko Gadhia from Domestic Taxes Department, specifically Business Transformation Office. So I'm joined by my colleagues. I have Fiona Omondi also joining from BTO, and also David Busaule, just to offer additional support. I think he'll be joining a bit later. Yes, I'll be your lead presenter on the same. So I don't know, Emendi, if we just start off, or I just return the session to you, and then you can tell me when to kick it off.
Madam Grace, we are good to go. Ready when you're ready. Thanks.
Okay, I think I'm ready. So just give me a minute to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Indeed, we can see the Word document, the presentation. Thanks.
Okay, that's good. Now, basically, let me just do a small introduction of what we do. Business Transformation Office basically handles any automation processes in iTax. Any changes that come with the Finance Act changes, we do the implementation. We also brainstorm on better ways of simplifying the filing process or the journey for the taxpayer in terms of filing across all obligations. So that is why we are here for the VAT auto-populated return. The purpose of this return was just to simplify the filing process. Actually, the vision of this return is to have a web form version of it, similar to the one we have for filing employment income only return. So that is the end vision, but we had to start from somewhere, and this was our starting point. And then also, in terms of anything that changes in law, we do the implementation first. We do the testing, make sure that everything is running as it should before we take it out to the public. So basically, in a nutshell, that is what we do. And where there is an issue with the system, we pick up the issues from now our officers, because they are our customers, and then now we fix the issues as they arise. So for purposes of today's presentation, what brings us here is the VAT auto-populated return. It's not something new. It's something we've been very vocal about from last year, September, November, thereabout. The goal of this particular auto-populated return was also just to improve on the enhancement. So I'll just do a small introduction that's the same. So the auto-populated VAT return enhancement was an enhancement of the VAT return. Ideally, the rollout for it was supposed to be January 2024. But when we went live with it on 1st February 2024, we realized there were some few things we needed to sort out on our end. So we did an extension of the same and pushed the rollout date to February 2024. So it went officially live on 1st March 2024, and that is what every taxpayer has been able to access from the portal side. Now, basically, as I said, the objective has been very, very clear. It is to improve on VAT compliance and transparency, and just also just to ease in terms of filing, giving you visibility of your own transactions by consuming data from eTeams. And when it comes to imports, we're also consuming data from ICMS. The key feature I want you to take from this is that, and we need to appreciate, is that the auto-populated return has become a consumer. It's actually a consumer return. Everything that you're auto-populating from you is available in iTax first before we can auto-populate for you or from our database. So, Many, just confirm as I scroll, everything is okay, kindly?
We're together. Thanks.
Okay, fantastic. So basically, I know there has been a bit of concern in terms of the auto-populated return losing the meaning of a self-assessment return. So that is not the case. We are just providing data as it is already available to us from the eTeam side and also ICMS when it comes to imports. So nothing has changed. It is still in line with Section 28(4) of the Tax Procedures Act. So ideally, we will auto-populate for you this data, and then now you will use it to file your returns. When it comes to sales, and I'll go deeper into it once I start looking at the return in depth, you will find that there are moments where maybe you wanted to, if you're an early bird when it comes to filing, you find that maybe you need to file, you prefer filing your returns early and not do a last minute rush, like you're filing today or tomorrow or even yesterday. So maybe you had made sales in that particular month but are yet to be transmitted. So for sales, you can be allowed to actually increase the sales. But I'll get an in-depth. So it is not losing the meaning from how it is anchored in law, because remember, it is the what we're saying under Section 28 for it is the obligation of the taxpayer or the responsibility of the taxpayer to ensure that the data is correct before submitting that return. Then just I wanted to have a walkthrough on the exemptions and the exclusions that are affecting in terms of the electronic tax invoice. So the guidelines for the exclusions or the exemptions are stipulated under Section 23A(4) of the Tax Procedures Act. I'll just do a run through of them. They're around 6 or 7. Yes, they should be 7. So they exclude transactions such as emoluments subject to pay as you earn, importation of goods, importation of services from a foreign country, interest income for financial institutions, investment allowances, airline passenger ticketing, and any other exemption granted by the commissioner in accordance with the law. What this other last part means is that nothing is fixed, or rather nothing is cast in stone. Different scenarios come every single day. The world is evolving. So that inclusion is in the law is just to accommodate anything that is coming up or the different changes that may be coming up. So the gazettement of the electronic tax invoice regulations, it should be 2023, will provide further guidance on any additional exclusions. So that has not yet been done. I'd like to just address this statement. A few months back, I remember there was a leak in the social media where the so-called regulations, I say so-called because it was purporting that anyone who is trading below 5 million would be exempted from issuing an electronic tax invoice. That is not the case. That particular rumor never came from our organization. It never came from Kenya Revenue Authority. And just to give you a pro tip as taxpayers, always be guided when we are about to gazette a regulation. Remember that regulation stems from the mother law. In this case, the mother law being Section 23 A of the Tax Procedures Act. So if that particular exclusion or exemption is not captured in that particular mother law, then there is no way we will introduce it in the regulation in itself. It is not a new law from the mother law. So if such an inclusion was supposed to be there as per what the rumors were there in the market, then ideally we would first have to change or amend the law through a tax law amendment or through the finance bill. But that's just a pro tip. It always guides, because I remember when that thing hit the market, some companies went a bit proactive. I know, like for insurance companies, where they were even issuing information to their clients on such matters. There was a reaction on a rumor that wasn't really substantiated from our offices. So just that was just a comment on that. Then now I want to start off and just take you through the key features of the VAT auto-populated return. So with your permission, just allow me. I had already logged in as a taxpayer, but I can just log in again. So I want to access the auto-populated return. I've logged in. Now allow me to make a comment here. These links that are here where you can see my cursor, I need to make a comment, and I think it will also answer some of the questions that are already coming in the chat. There has been a question of, is the auto-populated return mandatory? No, it is not. The auto-populated return, you'll find it here where my cursor is. So we're not saying that this particular return is mandatory. What we're saying is, as much as you do not wish to use the data that we are pre-filling for you in the CSV files, the validation checks that have come with the birth of the auto-populated return will also be there in the old return, the other VAT return. So just to ease the burden on just trying to narrow down where the errors are coming from, because at least when you have data, you have a basis of knowing where the problem is, rather than where you do not have data. Because this other return, let me just download it. So this other return, as you can see, has nothing. It has no CSV file on it. If it comes to the actual return, on just the bare minimum of the basic information, nothing is auto-populated. General rated sales is not there. And then if it's sheet C, that one is correct. It's not supposed to be there. And then G, other rated purchases, I'll show you what happens for that particular sheet. The minute I capture the period of 1st February 2024, this year was a leap year, so 29th, 2024. That when you capture the period of February 2024, you can see sheet G disappears. So basically, the normal return is there, but it has no data. There is no pre-filling. So for us, what we are encouraging and we are advising taxpayers, it is better to start from a point where you have the foundation, where you have in data, just to reduce the issues or the errors that you might be encountering at the point of filing. So basically, that is just how the normal return is. But what I'm trying to emphasize is, as much as the data is not auto-populated for the old version of the return, it is still available for you. You can still use it. But the key thing you need to note, the validation checks apply across board. Whether you're using the auto-populated return or you're using the older method where you're manually entering or capturing these CSV files, the validation checks still apply. So for now, I'll just close it because I don't need it. And then I'll go back to my return. So I had already what was it? I had already downloaded the auto-populated return earlier. You can see from my presentation that the return period from return period 2 is referencing September 2023. Please don't let that bring any confusion. The system or the platform I'm using is a bit behind, but the concept of the auto-populated return will not be lost. So ideally, right now, I know all of us are filing returns for February 2024. So when you log in on your portal, that is what you will see. So just for the purposes of this training, we will work with September 2023, but don't let that remove or rather uh, differ us from the filing season being February 2024. So this is how my return looks like. This is how it has been auto-populated. I have the VAT3 return here and I have the CSV. So when I open the CSV files, this is what I receive. I have section B with VAT pin 1, section B without pin and non-VAT pin 1, section D1 with VAT, section 2. For this particular taxpayer, their CSV files run across board. They have general rated sales which are referred in section B. They have zero rated sales which are in section D1. Then section E relates to exempt sales. They have imports. They have also local purchases. They have zero rated purchases and they have exempt purchases. So for them, it is across board. So I will refrain from opening the actual CSV files for purposes of data protection and open the CSV file that I had already done an alteration of the data. So what you're seeing here is a section B without pin and non-VAT P1. So let's appreciate and rather do an understanding of the difference between section B, which is I'm highlighting with VAT P1, refers to all transactions between a registered taxpayer to another registered taxpayer. Section B without PIN and non-VAT PIN1 relate to all transactions from a registered taxpayer as like they have logged in as that particular taxpayer, but to an unregistered taxpayer or the final consumer. So I would ideally expect transaction like if today I was to walk into Naivas, me as Grace, I've gone to do maybe my evening shopping, I've bought and I've been given an e-Teams or Teams compliant invoice because I'm a final consumer and I've not provided my PIN, then that particular transaction or that particular sale would ideally come and appear in this particular CSV file. Now, there's an item, the first item in the presentation on the key features of the VAT auto-populated return is the introduction of the pipe character in the auto-populated CSV file. So this is an example of that CSV file I've opened. You can see the dates are for September 2023. You can see the pipe. What I'm talking about is here, the first character before the zero. So I have the numeric characters of the team's invoice. There are 19 characters in total, but there's a character here that I've highlighted right there, which is what we're calling the pipe. Now, the purpose of this particular character is quite simple. Why we introduced it, it was to address the issue that taxpayers were encountering, where if you remove any digit in an Excel that, or rather a numeric entry that starts with a zero, it truncates. So by truncating, what I mean, it looks like this. I don't know if my screenshot is visible. Please confirm, Mindy, or I expand
Visible.
it.
Yeah. I think we're good.
So
Thank
you
you.
can see the invoice. You can see the invoice number has truncated. So at the point of you validating that return, what would happen? You would receive this error that you can see here that I've highlighted. So it would tell you that please enter alphanumeric data. Special characters like space are not allowed. So it would truncate and it would bring a challenge. So just to ease, especially for someone who has a lot of transaction, we introduced the character we're calling a pipe character. So that is one of the key features in the that is one of the features in the auto-populated return. So remember, for every return, there are errors you encounter at the point of validating that return, and the errors you encounter at the point of submitting the return. For this particular issue we were fixing, the issue was coming at the point of validating the return, not submitting. Now, the second item I wanted to address, which comes somehow in the form of a question, is which date is referenced in the VAT auto-populated return. So I'll go back. So I have this column D. Column D if you align it and you check with the VAT return, it references the invoice date. So there has been a lot of confusion on what are we capturing. Is it the invoice date or the transmission date? So I wanted us to first appreciate that in the VAT Act or in our laws, our tax laws, we do not reference our a transmission date, rather we reference the invoice date. So when it comes to even claiming input tax, when we're doing our count of 6 months, we reference the invoice date. So the dates that we are populating here refer to the invoice date and not the transmission date. So that is another feature of that needs to be taken into consideration when it comes to the auto-populated return. Then I just want to do a brief run through on the transaction capacity in the auto-populated return. So the transaction capacity, I'm talking about the CSV files. The capacity in this CSV files. So if it is section B with VAT pin 1, these are B2B transactions. I am registered, I am selling to someone who is registered. So what we're saying, if I open this CSV file, the maximum number of transactions that one CSV file can hold is 50,000 transactions. So what will happen as a seller, if I have more than 50,000 transactions, you will have more than one CSV file for registered taxpayers. So you'll have one section B with VAT pin 1 and then another one section B with VAT pin 2. So the maximum that one CSV file can hold is 50,000 for registered. Registered to registered, meaning these CSV files, I will need to import them in my return, right? Now, there's this other CSV file. We're talking about section B or section D1 or section E without PIN and non-VAT PIN 1. Now, what we're saying is for that particular CSV file, for CSV files relating to sales or purchases, transactions to an unregistered taxpayer or final consumer, we're looking at B2C. The total number of transactions that one CSV file can accommodate are 1,000,000. Let me repeat that. So the maximum number of transactions that particular CSV file can actually accommodate is 1,000,000. So the expectation, or my expectation, is for most of the taxpayers who are actually partaking in this engagement, I do not expect you to be having more than one CSV file of this for non-registered taxpayers. We only have 8 taxpayers currently in the Kenyan market who will have more than one because their transactions have surpassed the 1,000,000 mark. I could give the big 8, let me call them the big 8 without actually naming them. From our analysis we've done, we've seen that those particular 8 taxpayers will actually receive more than one CSV file. But for you who has less than 1,000,000 transactions, as a final consumer or to the non-registered taxpayer, you will only receive one. So I'm just giving you a run through of the small checks that you do when you're using the auto-populated return. Then the other comment I'd like to make is on the capacity that section B and section F of the VAT return. Now we've moved from the CSV file, we've gone to the return. Please take note of the difference. The capacity that section B and section F, so we're looking at transactions to a registered taxpayer and accommodate a 75,000, as we are yet to encounter a taxpayer whose sales or purchases surpass that number. So these are the CSV files you're importing, right? There's no taxpayer we've seen so far currently who has surpassed the 75,000 mark. When we get there, we will do an enhancement to accommodate them, to accommodate more transactions. So remember, this is on the return. The other capacity is on the CSV file. There's a difference. So that is another key feature of the VAT auto-populated return. Then I wanted just to do another comment on the CSV files that are actually the expectation of the CSV files that you can receive in the VAT auto-populated return. So all CSV files will be auto-populated for all registered taxpayers, with the exception of Section D2, which relates to exports, and Section J, which relates to VAT on imported services. Therefore, for these particular categories of CSVs, we're looking at exporters here and anyone who wants to declare VAT on imported services, then you will still use the old system of manually capturing your sales transactions, right? And then for imported services, the same. So we have not facilitated these particular CSV files, but every other CSV file, section B, section D1, section E, section G, not G, section I, H, and F, you will receive CSV files, right? Then a slight comment on the same. Please note the uniqueness of section F DST, as the source of this data is not Teams, because remember, for a taxpayer who is in D2, Digital Economy Taxpayer Office, they are exempted from issuing an Teams or Teams invoice. They are not exempted from VAT. There's a difference. So they are registered for VAT, yes. However, they are exempted from issuing an Teams invoice. So they qualify. They are added to the seven exclusions we have under Section 23A of the Tax Procedures Act. So ideally, as a DST taxpayer, when I log in right now on iTax, I will not have any CSV files being auto-populated. That's a difference. For them, they're unique. They're very unique. Their category is unique compared to the rest of the taxpayers. So please note that the uniqueness of Section F. So for you to receive Section F DST, which I'll do a run through once we get there, when we're looking at DST taxpayers, there's some key things. For me as a purchaser, I am allowed to do business, of course, with anyone who's in the DITO category. So I've come to maybe Showmax or Google or Meta, and maybe I need advertisement services from them. So because I'm the DST taxpayers, I need to claim. I'll do business with them, but for me as a buyer, I need to claim the input VAT for that. So for me, for that CSV file, that's what I wanted to come at. For that CSV file to auto-populate in my return, me as Grace, the buyer, Meta, Google, Showmax, the DST taxpayer has to file their return and declare that transaction as a line item. We'll get into it once I take you through the return. Then we need to also appreciate something else, which was on the removal of section of sheet C and sheet G in the VAT return. So we are looking at the return now. So it's not just a matter of the auto-populated return, it is the VAT return in general. So whether you're using the auto-populated return or the old system of filing, like you saw when we started, when I downloaded the old return and then I captured the February period and sheet G disappeared. So that has been done to align with the law. So basically, the expectation of that is sheet G, the removal of that particular sheet will be effective from the tax period of February 2024, because if it was an issue of you claiming input tax from a sale that was done in the month of July, then 6 months are over. Then for sheet C, the effective date for that tax period would be August 2023. Remember, when the Finance Act 2023 took effect on 1st July 2023, it faced opposition. I think it was that 1st July 2023 fell on a weekend. So when we I think 3rd July, we it was challenged in court, and because of that challenge, a final ruling from the court was issued on 29th July. So for that period of July 2023, of course, some taxes were still issuing other rated sale invoices. So just to accommodate you claiming input tax, or rather the buyer to claim the input tax relating to those sales transactions, for sheet G, the closing was, you're supposed to claim by January 2024. And then now for the sale, we were not expecting, or rather, it is not expected for you to still be issuing an other rated sale invoice in Teams or Teams. We are aware that in Teams, you still, that part of 8% is still available it is still available in terms on that platform. But for us, when it comes to the return, you cannot claim it. You cannot claim it as a sale. You cannot declare it as a sale, and you can also not claim it as an input tax. So that's the other comment I wanted to make on that. So before we go to the adjustments, so now I'll do a walkthrough. Now, allow me just to open my return, my auto-populated return. So the current version of the VAT return is version 15.0.7. As you can see already the difference between the other VAT return and the auto-populated return. Pre-filling has already occurred. The PIN of the data is there, the type of return, entity type, the return period from. You'll notice the return period 2 is blank. I'll explain why. It is not an omission, it is not a mistake. It has been done intentionally. And then now, when it comes to matters like general rated sales, the amount has been auto-populated. For B2C. Just a minute. And then we have sheet C, which is the other rated sales. Then we have zero rated, exempt, F being for purchases, general rated, other rated, zero rated. So for the auto-populated return, the minute you open the return, you'll realize sheet G is available, is open, and then sheet C is also available. So just observe what happens when I capture the period for September 2023, which is the return of auto-populated. You can see sheet C has disappeared. So allow me just to capture February 2024, which is your current filing period. C is gone and sheet G is also gone. So that's okay, it's fine. So what I wanted to just comment, total sales and VAT to customers not registered for VAT. You can see there's an auto-populated figure here. So the source of this ideally is from my data here, section B without PIN and non-VAT PIN 1. So this is where that lump sum is coming from. And then now this section B is now what I need to open. Just a minute. So this is my data for that I would want to import for section B. I'll just do that. I'll save it again. Then go back to my return and import the CSV. So auto-population has worked. There we have it. Now for zero rated, the procedure is the same. You'll find that there's a lump sum figure here as well. So the source of that lump sum figure is section D1 without PIN and non-VAT PIN. So again, to a non-registered taxpayer. So I'll just open, I'll auto sum the figure for you. So the total is 22,800. You can see in my return, that's the same figure I have here. So it tallies. So I'm not importing that particular CSV. Remember, B2C transactions, we don't import the CSV file. So I won't save it. And I'll also close this just to avoid any confusion. The return I'm interested in is this because this is the one I'm importing. Now you'll notice that my column C has the name of purchaser as test. I know right now we are auto-populating for you the name of the purchaser when it comes to the sales. It was one of the fixes we delivered in the month of February before we went live. So for now, just ignore my entries here because I have not downloaded this data afresh. So I'll save it again. Go back to my return. And this week, remember it's section D1. So there. And then I'll do the same thing for section E because I have the data. So this again is to an unregistered taxpayer. And then now this is the CSV that I am interested in. So I'll just save it once more. And then go to my return to exempt sales. Import the CSV file to register taxpayers. There we go. Now, I would want to go back to my presentation so that I give you a walkthrough. I know these are the parts that you're all interested in, the checks, the validation checks we have in place, and how to go about it. So let's do a run through on sales, where we're looking at the adjustments that you can do in the return. Begin with issued or generated and transmitted 18 team sales invoices. So the requirements for this particular, of course, when you're making an adjustment, you can either make an adjustment upwards or you can make an adjustment downwards. Basically, the English what meaning of that can go up or go down. So this is how the sales part works. So for the VAT auto-populated return, actually the VAT return, because this check is across board on the auto-populated return and also the older version of the return, the filing system of the return. So if you don't want to use the data we are pre-filling for you and you're using the older version or you're using your own data, this check will now always pop up, or rather will always be active and functioning. So what we're saying is the first rule is that you cannot under declare or reduce the total sales in each of the VAT sales category. So this means section B, section D1, and section E. This is where we've picked up a few or a number of issues when it comes to sales. So you have issued a client with an invoice that was a sale. Then at the same time, transmission has been done. So you've issued using your trader invoicing system. It has been there's a CU also, then it has been transmitted to KRA. Now, if the transmitted sales amount is 150 million, at no point can you reduce it from the 150 million. So we've received a number of complaints or issues surrounding this. Scenario one would be at the point of you issuing, I'll look at the first scenario where you issued an items invoice with a foreign currency. Now, maybe the sale was 6,300 euros, right? And the anticipation was that through items and teams, you can issue the same foreign currency invoice. One, that is not possible. It goes against our own tax laws. This is anchored in Section 23 of the Tax Procedures Act. Everything has to be in Kenya shillings. So if your business currently is in a foreign currency, you're issuing invoices in dollars, euros, whatever it is, the correct approach should be you're supposed to issue that invoice, you convert using the day's exchange rate, the CBK exchange rate for that day. So if the invoice was 6,300 euro, convert it to Kenya shillings, generate an items or teams invoice with that equivalent. That is what is supposed to be done. So we've encountered situations where I think that was not clear. I'm not sure where the communication breakdown was, So you captured it as 6,300. Just for on our end, it will pick as Kenya shillings, not euro. So what do we do, or how do you reverse it? Because this one has already been transmitted, we have received it. So remember, because we've received that amount, the only way to amend any sales transaction is by vacating the sale. I used this word yesterday, and I think at some point I lost people in the process. Vacating a sale basically means you need to issue a credit note through items with the same information. What I mean is, when you're issuing that original invoice, if you did not capture the PIN of the buyer, please, when you're issuing the credit note, do not capture the PIN of the buyer. It should match. It is a reversal or a cancellation of what you have done. So by canceling, you cannot introduce something new, because what will happen in such a scenario, if in the original invoice you did not capture the PIN of the buyer, and in the credit note you're capturing the PIN of the buyer, that buyer will receive that credit note and they'll be forced to declare it. On their end, on your end, it's not maybe major issue, but it's an issue on the purchaser side, because they'll be forced to declare a credit note where the mother invoice, they did not enjoy the input VAT of the mother invoice. So they will always be in a minus position. I hope that comes out clearly. The other scenario of sales where we've realized there's a lot of conflict on the sales that are being auto-populated have been inflated. I've done a few tests this morning where that had come up, and what we've realized was in the invoice checker, it captures the say, for example, when you're issuing that invoice, the invoice amount was 344,000. So invoice checker populates. When you put that invoice, it populates as 344,000. Now, the issue is coming at the point of transmission. Remember, an invoice can carry one line item or a number of line items. You could, the same way you go to the supermarket, you go buy your monthly shopping, you have 60 items in that invoice. The invoice is one, but the line items are 60. So for the 60, when we do our analysis on the particular line items in the invoice, what has come about is the taxable amount is correctly captured. However, the VAT is what is the word? Is different. So we are having an issue whereby when we receive the data on our end, or that's not even our issue, it's on the issue between the configuration between the trader invoicing system and the CU, where data is shifting or it's changing, for lack of a better word. When you're invoicing, everything is, but now the taxable, what is not being picked is when we receive that data, as we pick the taxable amount, computation on our end in the return, you've seen what we've done here in the return. Let me just show you, just so that it comes out clearly. Even in your CSV file, we look at the sale, we capture the sale value. Let me use general rated, it's a better place to explain it. When you're capturing a CSV file, how it is, you never capture column H, ever. That will be computed in the return. We never ask you to do that computation for your on your end when you're creating a CSV file for general rated sales. When other rated was there, it was the same concept. So you will capture the taxable value correctly, but the VAT amount at the point of transmission is different from what we are putting in the return. Remember, I've captured up to column G. So for us, when we import the CSV file, we will compute for you the VAT element for it. So transmission has come with one amount, VAT return we've computed for you using the taxable amount. So the discrepancy we're talking about is on the VAT, it's not the taxable value. So the taxable value aligns both on iTax and what is being auto-populated and what has been transmitted. What is differing is the VAT. and that is where it's creating a challenge. So for you in your books, you've been expecting for a sale of $1 million, the 16% of it, there's an error where on the VAT the computation was what? Let me use 1600. But now when we receive the data, because we are consuming the taxable value, the 1 million, I'll compute for you the correct VAT against 16 cents. Now, another scenario we have seen for sales, just to come out clearly, is a data correction error. Your original intent was to capture an invoice amount of 70,000. But when you're issuing that invoice, you captured 700,000. It is human is to error. No one is perfect. These things happen. It could be a genuine situation where you genuinely just added an extra zero. Like for real, you just added an extra zero. So in such a scenario, that 700,000 has already been transmitted to us. We will not change it. And that will be your output for that particular invoice. So for you to amend it, you need to issue a full reversal of that particular sales invoice. Issue a full credit note. Again, remember how you issued that invoice should match with how you issue with a credit note. I've seen so many situations where a taxpayer has issued an invoice capturing the PIN of the buyer, everything is correct. But for some reason, and I quote the exact words I remember taxpayer told me yesterday, the system is not able, when they're issuing a credit note, system is not able to capture the PIN of the buyer. And I was a bit lost because that should not even be happening, meaning there's an issue with how the configuration has been done. Because if you can issue an original invoice with the PIN of the buyer, you should be able to issue a credit note in the same breath where you're capturing the PIN of the buyer. So you have scenarios whereby the original invoice is populating in this particular, let me show you. The original invoice is populating here. The credit note is populating here. I see the discrepancies. So here, the one thing the auto-populated return has brought to the surface is the number of configuration issues that taxpayers have undergone or are not even aware of. They are undergoing credit notes being issued against an invoice that they have no idea where that credit note was issued. They are not even aware a credit note was issued, because now when it comes to the return, as long as that credit note has been issued with your PIN, the system is forcing you to declare that or prompting you to declare that credit note. So there's a lot that has come to the surface, and the most heartbreaking thing for me, I would say, is the misinformation that these issues are being treated by KRA, and the issue is at the source, the starting point, the configuration, how the configurations are being done, and that this is where we are at. So we're looking at this is where we are at. Grace, this is where we are at. I have inflated sales. When we investigate why it is inflated, now, if now an issue like now, a genuine issue where sales are replicating, I won't use the word duplicating. Let me use the word replicating. Replicating would mean I have my phone today. Or rather, I'm selling a Samsung phone. And as I sell it, it is just one product with the same product ID details, description, everything. But the device will replicate that sale more than once. So what you've been doing up to January 2024, before the auto-populated, is you've been doing your own manual reconciliations. You look at that sale happened once. When it happened once, my device replicated that sale 50 times. So you have 50 transactions on the same sale, right? For one product. It could be a genuine situation. But remember, the replication for us is it is giving a different invoice number for all the 50 transactions. So from our end, the invoice number being the unique identifier, it's a bit difficult just to know if it is an issue with the device or these are actual sales that should be vatable and should be payable. So for now, for the purposes of filing the February 2024, there's nothing we can do. We can go back. We can't reverse it. The only way is to amend, vacate the sale, issue a credit note to cancel. So if there were 50, only one is a valid sale, cancel the 49. That is what we're saying. I know we have been having discussions on how we can mitigate the issue on replication, and I believe we will be doing a delivery on the same for purposes of filing of March 2024. But since February 2024 is here, and this issue is not new, it hasn't been brought about by the auto-populated return. It's just that now the auto-populated return has brought it to the surface, and this is where we are at. So the manual reconciliation no longer works. So one of the adjustments for sales, and I echo it, you cannot reduce your sales. Any attempt to reduce the sales, you will receive an error for section B, you will receive an error for section D1, you will receive an error for section D, for section E. Now, the other comment I would want to make, because I've seen it, it was an emerging issue, and it had come up on a lot of forums where we were informed that at the point of auto-populating the return, the exempt sales had been put together, or rather merged, with zero-rated sales. So we analyzed the issue and realized the issue was on the tax code. I think the interpretation of when someone hears an exempt sale, you automatically relate it to zero. But you see, in VAT, tax code of zero is zero-rated. So that confusion of the tax code is what was being the issue. So we did an intervention this weekend. We did a release and an enhancement on Sunday. And so if you're receiving that issue where your sales, exempt sales and zero-rated sales were mixing, as at Friday, as at yesterday, if you download, you have to download the return afresh. Don't rely with the old one, because the old one will have the old issues. So download the return afresh, you'll see that your exempt sales have separated. So it would also be answering a question where at the point of you downloading the return, you were finding that this particular part, just a minute, this particular part, you remember when you have exempt sales like this one I've imported, what usually happens, a column, I don't know if you can see serial number 16 and serial number 17 on sheet O, where it's input VAT attributable to only exempt supplies and input VAT, it opens up. When you do not have exempt sales, that part is usually grayed out. So now that you're able to declare your exempt sales, that part should be able to open up and apportionment of input tax can apply. So that one has been resolved. It's one of the issues we had noted, and we sorted it out, and a release was done over the weekend. Then the other comment I'd like to make in terms of the adjustment, in terms of that particular adjustment, that this check just does not affect the self-assessment return. It will also apply in the amended return. It will also apply in the additional assessment and default assessment. What I'm saying is, if the total transactions auto-populated is 150 million, even when you come to amend that return, because I remember someone asking me, Grace, but I can file a nil return and it still works. I said no. The same way you get a check for employment income when you're trying to file your employment income return and you have credits in the system, as long as we have visibility of eating sales and eating's purchases, or rather eating's, let me say sales mainly, it will flag you. You'll not be able to file a nil return just to beat the deadline, and then you come to amend. You have to declare those sales as they are, right? Now, the other check. So basically, these are just the errors. Just allow me to expand my, just to zoom in, just to see. So at the point of view, you will see that at the point of submitting the return, this is what pops up. Remember what I said, when it comes to any return, the error description can be from at the point of submitting the return or at the point of validating the return. So for this particular errors come about at the point of submission. So the general rated sales it will notify you the total. It will give you the total. It won't give you the breakdown. And then now for zero rated, that it will also flag you. So this is just an idea of how the errors will populate, or rather the description. So please take note of that. Then let me just reduce my size. Then the other check we have under sales is for sales, you are allowed to increase your sales. So the first one was you are not allowed to decrease as per what has been auto-populated, or rather what has been transmitted and we've received under your PIN. But the opposite is true, because like I said at the beginning, you could have a situation, especially for early bird taxpayers, those guys who really don't like waiting for last minute to do the filing. So you've done the most practical example I have in mind is 29th Feb, you need sales, especially guys who are 24 hours in terms of business operating. So you've done business up to the stroke of midnight, and then maybe those particular sales have not been transmitted come 1st March. And you want to file your returns on 2nd or 4th, and you just respond, okay. So what will happen? You are allowed to declare these sales in your return. Now, the how is very important. When you attempt to introduce a sale manually as a line item, what do I mean by a line item? Just a minute. As a line item, this is a line item. What I'm highlighting, this is a line item. So you want to increase your sales as a line item. So for this particular scenario, it will be rejected. You'll be told that that particular invoice number or items is not something to do with items. There's an error message. So the way forward for the sales that you had not declared, that have not been transmitted, but it's an actual sale that was done in the month of February, please come and make that adjustment here. So I will manually just adjust this from 25 million and put it at 55 million. So there, because remember, the condition of the condition for your buyer claiming input tax is not based on the declaration of that particular sale transaction by the seller. It is on the transmission. And that is why one of the key and most paramount and basic requirement of the auto-populated return, if you know you have any intention of claiming input tax, please ensure that you also give out your PIN, because once it is transmitted by the seller, that transaction will be auto-populated in the return. I know there's a very big discussion and issue around that particular what I've mentioned. I'll pick it up on the emerging issues because we've analyzed, we've rooted that the issue is, again, it's not on KRA side, but just explaining how the root cause of this whole issue and how just to go about it for purposes of filing the February 2024 return, how to fix it in your March sales, and just correcting the mistakes that were done in February 2024. So for purposes of sale, when you when you want to increase, please increase it as a lump sum in the return and not as a line item. By introducing it as a line item, I know that line item will be rejected by the return. You'll get an error message on your end, and it will give you a challenge at the point of filing the return. Then which is what I've stated here. So please be guided that you cannot manually introduce sales invoices to a registered taxpayer as a line item, but rather the addition of these transactions will be done on the lump sum in the VAT return as highlighted, which is what I've highlighted. So basically that screenshot was before I had done any importation, and that is how it looks. Now I'd like to make a special mention for Ditto when it comes to declaration of their sales. Now for them, it's a bit different. How they are gonna be handling their sales is a bit different. So what will happen? Ditto, because of how unique their situation is. Ditto means Digital Economy Taxpayer Office. So we have an office I believe they sit at JQR Towers, but basically these are taxpayers who are trading in the digital marketplace. So what will happen, and in engagements with them, any sale, because remember for them, they've how the practice has been, they've been declaring all their transactions as a lump sum. But now there's someone else who we need visibility. Remember, they're not issuing an eTIMS Teams invoice. So we are not receiving that data from eTIMS and Teams because they're exempted from it. So what will happen? Akina Uber, Showmax, Meta, Google, because I've seen questions that, Grace, they are not giving us invoices, so what do we do? Ideally, they're not supposed to give you an Teams invoice because they are exempted. They will give you the kawaida invoices that have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or depending on how their invoicing system is. So what will happen? For me as Grace, I've gone to them to buy a service, or let's say a service, right? Advertisement, for example. It is paramount and very key for me to be able to claim that input VAT from that particular transaction. They need to declare those sales as line items. Again, a line item is like this. This is a line item. So they will have to. The practice before was they were declaring as this a lump sum. Declare sales and move on. They don't have purchases. So as a lump sum, they file the return, pay VAT, and move on. But now I need to claim. So for me to receive it, to receive that CSV file, one, they have to file the return. So it means if I have any intention of claiming a purchase input VAT from a DST taxpayer, I cannot file, and I want to claim it in that month, I cannot file my return before they file the return. For DST, we are a bit joint at the hip in that manner. So if you're filing on the 20th, you will also file on the 20th. So I don't know if it's a matter of pacing yourself, but if you can forego that input that month and then you claim it in the following month once they've done their filing so that it doesn't cripple you in terms of filing, then you can also use that as an option because ideally input VAT can be claimed within 6 months. Now, they need to declare their sales in this manner. So if there's any DST taxpayer in the engagement, please take note of that. It is very key so that your buyer, or rather the buyer, can be able to enjoy claiming that input VAT. Failure to do that, they'll not be able to claim. They won't even receive that CSV file. So it's important just to have a mention as a mention on the same for this particular category of taxpayers. Now, I'd like to do a run through of, I can say I'm a bit bad on time. I want to do a run through on purchases. I know this is where our pain area is, so I'd want to take up a bit more time here. Now, again, you can see for my client, or rather my taxpayer, they have imports and they have section F for local. And then now you have digital supply in section F, and then they have H and I. Now, when you have CSVs like this, the two of them, what will happen, here are mine. So what will happen, you need to import both CSVs on the VAT return. You cannot import one, then you go add another. It will keep on replacing. So what you do, I'll just open one and then also open the second, which is relating to local. Now, it is easier because there's only one. It's easier for me just to copy it and I had even done it. So here it is. I had already done it before. So let me just replace it because the data is the same. Then I can close the section F for import and retain. Then save it because this is what I want to import. It will replace. And then I go back to my return for section F and import the CSV file, which is this. If I had a CSV file for, for DST, I would have merged all three. So for section F, the type of purchases are usually three. There's local, there is there is imports, and then there is DST. So when you have all three, you merge all three. When you have two, you merge the two. When it's just one, you import it as it is. So you have to merge before you import in the return. I feel like I need to do a mention in section, I don't know, please allow me to take you back kindly. Please allow me to take you back. For section D1, for sales, the other issue that has really come up, or rather, let me pick it up. You'll appreciate that for section D in the return, we have three categories of zero rated. So there's D1 local or exemption availed. So for the local, these are the transactions that off the cuff are in line with the law. They are already anchored in the VAT Act. It's not something that needs an approval or anything of the sort. Exemption availed is that you need to receive an exemption from the commissioner. Then once that exemption has been granted, then that particular transaction becomes zero rated. Then is D2. So exports by extension become zero rated. And that is why the three the three are under section D. Now, my comment, I would like to make a comment addressing exporters. We are aware you're having a challenge at the point of filing your return, where when you manually, remember when I said for exports, you manually capture your invoices. Now, I know there's at the point of validating that, or rather submitting that return, it is forcing you to capture that total amount under D1. So, and this is for guys who have exports, D2, and also they have D1 being auto-populated for them. So you need to capture both. So for now, for purposes of filing February 2024 returns, because we've realized the issue is on how the tax codes for the three are aligned, for the three of them. So as we sort out the separation and the validation checks for the two, for the month of February 2024, the for exports will also be captured under D1 for purposes of your return just going through. This is a noted issue. We can't deliver an enhancement with the timelines we have for the month. It actually affect everyone else who's trying to file VAT. So for now, just capture it. So I know the main concern and the main pain area is what happens if I need to apply for refund, because for most exporters, you'll find they'll have refunds that they need to pursue. So we're not saying it's a permanent situation. It's just for now, for just to accommodate, because once you shift it in D, you're able to file the return. Okay. So when we do the enhancement, the expectation would be we will sort out your February return for the guys exporters mainly, because you're affected. Then moving now March forward for March 2024, that issue will be resolved. So it is a documented issue, and that's what I wanted also for us to appreciate, where we know there's a gap on our end, but it's not making you not file. We've noted it, we'll fix it, and then we will also sort out your February 2024 returns. So it's documented, and I know it's just an issue of separating the tax codes and aligning on how e-teams and teams is doing it in that tax code, because there needs to be a demarcation between the three, because they're all zero rated, but the code is different for all. So for exporters mainly, that remark should be received by exporters. Just know for section D2, you might not be able, because I know it will prompt you that error that you need to, and you need in D1. So remember, for sales, you can increase. So it will see it like an increase. You're increasing, so it should not reject, right? But just put everything under D1. Then once we are able to provide a fix for the tax codes and just separating the two, and how our ITax, how our return is consuming different categories of tax codes for in terms of zero rated, then we'll sort you out for February, I believe, through an amendment, and then now we can also do it through. We can also now, the permanent fix will now sort you out for March 2024. So I hope that has come out clearly. I've realized I needed to just to pick it up at that point. Now, for purchases, what I was saying here. So for section F import, section F with VAT P1, and then also for DST, the merging has to be done. And then for section H, I'll just do a quick, I'll import it. So that is my data, file, save. And then go back to my return. For zero rated, I'll import. And then I do the same for I. File, save as. Mindy, please confirm I'm still audible. I think at times when you're doing a virtual training, you tend to see you're talking to yourself. So just
No,
confirm.
no. We are very much together, Madam Grace. Very much together. I think we are all set.
Okay, thank you for that. Now I've done the importation of F, H, and I. Now let's address your pain areas for purchases. We look at the adjustments. This one I'll do it from memory. I won't do the presentation. So the adjustments, see the adjustments we had for sales, the opposite applies for purchasing. So for sales, you cannot under declare the sale amount for all the categories B, D1, E. You cannot reduce it. Now for purchases, the reverse is true. For example, in the month of February 2024, my purchase and transaction a total of 100 transactions, right? We are not forcing anyone in any capacity to claim that input, not at all. So if you have 100 and how your business is, we are allowing you to reduce. And the reason why this reduction has been facilitated is also to align it with prohibition of input tax under the VAT Act. So anything that is prohibited ideally should be removed. We are allowing you to remove the purchases. Now, when it comes to introducing an input or invoice for a prior month, I've seen a lot of questions are surrounding that. At the point of where you're getting an error, that error, there are two types of errors. There's an error relating to an original invoice, and then there's an error that is telling you, please declare the relevant invoice this and relevant invoice date this is not in e-Teams or Teams, please declare it. That error relates to a credit note. Please note the difference. The minute you start hearing the words in the error description, relevant invoice number, relevant invoice date, it is referring to a credit note, because a credit note, when it is issued in e-Teams, it is only part where it relates or refers to an original invoice, right? Because we've tested this thing, and at no point where prior invoices are being introduced have been rejected. However, there's a catch here. If the seller issued a credit note for the same invoice number, it has to go in tandem in section F. So what that means is, if you're trying to introduce an invoice for January 2024 and your seller or your supplier issued a credit note against the same invoice, both have to be declared. There are no two ways about it, because I've encountered such issues today. They're not even, taxpayers are not even aware credit notes were issued, and that's where the pain area is. So that credit note has to be, as long as it was issued in the month of February 2024, it has to be declared in that return, in your return. So the 6-month rule has not been breached in any way. I actually beg to differ with that. And if I'm wrong, I would want to analyze it on a case by case basis. But so far, that is working perfectly. 6-month rule is working well. You can introduce an invoice for January, for December, for November, as long as it's within 6 months. Now, the other adjustment for purchases that we need to look at is we've looked at you can reduce. This is now where the pain area for everyone is. You have gone to your iTax profile, you've logged in. After logging in, you have no purchases, or the purchases you're expecting are less. Now, what we've uncovered or we've analyzed and seen that at the point of transmission, when you issued your invoice, the fiscal invoice, you are given your PIN is there. Well captured. My name is well captured. My PIN is well captured. Now, I might be forced to get a bit technical just to explain what is happening in the background. What KRA is consuming in terms of auto-populated return is what we're calling a specified format or a JSON file. That JSON file or the specified format will carry some mandatory fields. So at the point of view, the seller issuing this invoice, what is happening? You're capturing everything. See the way an Excel has enough columns, from column A to, let's put it to Z. Indulge me, from column A to column Z. You capture everything, you capture. But as you're entering the details in that same invoice, not every field you're capturing is a mandatory field for us in terms of what we are consuming. Let me pick that again. You will capture data in terms of issuing or generating that invoice from column A to column Z. So you capture the address details, especially the address details of the buyer. You capture it correctly. The PIN is there and that. So the address details in that, as you're capturing the invoice, on what is transmitted to KRA is not a mandatory field. So we will not receive that data because not every field is necessary. Like now, why would we even want to receive the logo? You understand what I mean? So the issue is coming at that point. The configuration between the trader invoicing system and the CU. The problem is not at the CU, it is this configuration between my trader invoicing system and the manufacturer. Let me use that word not to confuse anyone. And the manufacturer. So what we are saying is your purchases, you're expecting 100. You've received 10. For some, it is even none. Yes, we are aware. But now when we look at the database, your PIN is missing. And remember the fundamentals of the auto-populated return. It is not based on the declaration of the seller. It is based on the transmission, and not just any form of transmission, but transmission with the correct information, which is the PIN of the buyer. And that is where we're having the biggest challenge. So the PIN of the buyer is missing, and that is why you're missing purchases in your auto-populated return. That's one reason. Another reason could be transmission has not been done. Transmission has not been done. So as long as transmission has not been done, which I'm wondering why transmission has not been done in today's 19 for transactions that were done in Feb, but it's possible. I'm not even judging. It's very, very much possible. So the first check is one, using scan the QR code, confirm it has. If you don't want to scan, use the invoice checker on the portal. We have facilitated the tools of trade of how you check. When you check, yes, you will see it will even populate you the information. So the next check is, was my PIN captured? The fiscal, I repeat, the fiscal invoice will have your details. It is on paper, everything is okay. But in the database, what KRA is receiving, and we are not altering any information, we are not doctoring anything, your PIN was omitted. So under the PIN of buyer, it comes as null. Actually, the word is null. And that is why you're not receiving any purchases. So it brings me to the second check, or rather the second condition or rule for purchases. You cannot manually introduce. Let me say that again. You cannot manually introduce a purchase that has not been transmitted. Why I've not used the word auto-populated, I have a reason for it. So just give me an opportunity to explain. The key part is transmission. And transmission how? Because we're saying these invoices are valid, they're transmitted, but they don't have a PIN. So on the seller's part, those transactions, and for the guys who've come, we've sat down with taxpayers who've said, yeah, Grace, the problem was on our end. The issue was on the configuration. That is what the problem is. We've sorted it out. February, we will deal with it up to where we realized the issue was up to March, mid-month, or wherever it was sorted. So even March transactions have been affected, and we will resolve the issue. So on the seller's part, since the PIN of the buyer was not transmitted, that data will be in the CSV file that I'm highlighting, if you can see. For the purchaser, you do not have that data. That is where we are at. And the next question is, what do we do? The reality is, as long as your PIN was not captured for transactions of Feb, you are not able to claim input tax. For the seller, the course of action is, since the PIN of the buyer was not transmitted, what you're supposed to do is to completely cancel that sale this month. I'm really hoping and I'm praying sellers can actually do it this month so that we don't carry forward issues into April, May, June. So for this particular month, the correction is you cancel that invoice. That is the course of action. Cancel that invoice. How do you cancel it? You issue a full reversal credit note. Now, the particulars of the credit note is, as I had emphasized in the beginning, the PIN of the buyer is missing. So even in that credit note, you will not capture the PIN of the buyer. The minute you introduce the PIN of the buyer to cancel that, remember you're referencing the mother invoice, a totally different issue is being created altogether. So I would really like to emphasize that bit and that part. Please, please, when you're canceling that invoice that was transmitted without the PIN of the buyer, then you need to issue a full reversal credit note without the PIN of the buyer. Once you do that, have a sit down and a discussion with your provider and understand if it is that the PIN of the buyer, because you're capturing it and address it details, and I think the assumption is as long as you've captured it there, transmission is being done. Understand where the PIN of the buyer should actually, the mandatory field that is being transmitted to KRA as part of the JSON file or the specified format. Those are the discussions that you need to be having with your providers, because we need to deal with the problem at source. Source is not KRA. The source is at the point of translation, and that is your manufacturer. So you need to have those discussions.
Madam
As
Grace,
painful
sorry,
and
if I,
frustrating.
with your permission, I request it's now 3:57. We have about 30
Yes,
minutes overall to go. So perhaps we can wind up in the next 5 to 10 minutes so that we have at least 20 minutes for Q&A. Thanks.
no problem. Okay. So I think now I'll just rush through the issues, but basically that is the emphasis on, because I know that is your biggest pain area. The other item for purchases, we have introduced the issue of declaring credit notes. So as long as a credit note has been auto-populated for you, then you need to also declare that credit note. You cannot remove it for in terms of credit note as long as those credit notes were issued in the month of February 2024. So that one needs to be done. And then now the other item for purchases, DST taxpayers, I have already addressed when it comes to sales and how it works. If I'm claiming from the DST taxpayer, the only way I'll get my CSV file is once the DST taxpayer has done their filing. Now, I'd like to highlight how many issues? One, two, three. Declaration of self-supply. This has been a noted issue because we've realized how the return has been mapped. You're not able to remove, especially where a credit note has been issued. So you made a self-supply and a sales with your PIN. You captured the PIN correctly, and then it was auto-populated. So you'll have the transaction under sales, right? Then you've gone ahead and issued a credit note for that same sale. So what will happen under sales, you have the transaction. Under purchases, you have the transaction. So on both sides, the expected is two transactions under sales the original and the credit note, 2 transactions under purchases, the claiming of the input for the original invoice, and of course the credit note. So because you need to declare that credit note, the same will force you rather to let me use the word force you. It will force you to actually declare that credit note. Then I know for taxpayers who have self-supply, you're in a predicament because you're unable to file the return. We are addressing that issue today. I'm hoping we can deliver it in live tonight. It's gonna be a long night for some of us. And then also the issuance of a credit note. It's a valid credit note, but it was issued against an invoice that is time barred. Meaning, you've issued a credit note in February 2024, but the original invoice was for even 2022. I know this is happening, it's being allowed at Teams, but now we need to sort you guys out for February 2024 because those returns won't go through. Again, that delivery should be done today. The other category of issue is the VAT special table, where you're trying to, again, the supplier has been placed on special table, and then credit note has been issued against the same relevant invoice and against the same supplier. The details are the same. So what is happening again? You can't, because the error of this particular pin is not eligible for VAT input deduction. Ideally, the practice for purchases has been to remove, because that supplier is on special table because there's a compliance issue for the same. So what will happen for if there's a credit note that has been issued on the same, you're unable to remove it. So that delivery will also be done. So how we will go about it, you will remove the mother invoice, but you will not remove the credit note. You will retain the credit note in your return. Once we deliver it tonight, you'll be able to do it to confirm tomorrow once you auto-populate the return. So the mother invoice, the relevant invoice, the starting point in your purchases, you will delete it because that pin has been flagged. So you're not able to claim it there input. However, the credit note, we will allow it to. The relaxation has been done for that particular transaction. So the delivery. So I know those are the things now where we want to take ownership. We say, yes, we're aware, and this is what we're doing for it, and that's what is happening. I think, Mandy, I'll stop there just in case I pick up something else comes to mind during the Q&A. I'll address it at that point so that also Teams is able to respond to any issues that have come up from the chats. But I hope I've been as I've described the issues and captured it as to the best of my ability. So back to you, Mandy.
Thank you very much, Madam Gadhia. Thank you for the last 1.5 hours. I think we've been taken through quite thoroughly the return itself, and I sincerely appreciate your insights on the same. I think it was important and helpful that you echoed some of the sentiments that taxpayers have been experiencing. We are alive to some of these challenges, the elephants in the room, and we, again, as you've heard, are working round the clock to resolve these and give you the necessary support channels. I think also, just to note, we'll be having another session tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Madam Grace's colleague, Mr. David Bosaole, will be taking us through the final sensitization as we work towards filing our returns by the due date, that is tomorrow. Again, we have recordings similar to this one that are available on the KRA YouTube channel. We have about 3 that have been recorded in the last 2 to 3 months. Therefore, the information there will also be helpful to guide you in filing your return, and it'll help you make reference. We also have the step-by-step guide that's available on the website, as well as other helpful recordings available on the KRA YouTube channel and the KRA TV. So without further ado, thank you once again, Grace. I'll give you about a 5-minute break before you come back on, but I think by and large, you were able to cover some of these pressing issues. Our purchases being a pressing issue. During the presentation, have captured a number of issues. By and large, taxpayers asking, where are my purchases? Purchases are either missing, they say they're erroneous, they're duplicate or replicate, as you mentioned, and or the values are inconsistent with the values that they issued themselves. So those are some of the challenges I've noted. I think also when you come back on, Madam Grace, maybe you can touch on just quickly what the law has said about the 6-month rule. Is the VAT auto-populated return coming to change anything? I think I'll maybe ask you to restate a number of the issues you mentioned about credit notes, imports, and then finally a few taxpayers who between the 1st of March and to date have been downloading the auto-populated return. They say that the information available changes. How can one, if at all you've experienced that challenge or received that complaint, how can a taxpayer know which one is right? So those are some of the just frequently occurring questions. I think if you answer those, you've answered well over 95% of the queries coming in. But as you take a short break, allow me to bring back on our team from eTeams headquarters, Madam Susan Tirimba and Zainab Kadenge. Thank you to both of you who've been responding to comments, questions, concerns in the chat as we've been going through the main presentation. I think I'll bring you back on, Susan, at this stage, just to touch on any frequently occurring question you've seen in the chat. On my end, maybe I can just request you to start with the issue of a number of our taxpayers, a number of our large taxpayers are encountering challenges with when it comes to eTeams and Teams invoicing. Top among those being the Kenya Power and Lighting Company, KPLC. We also have a number of challenges with taxpayers receiving invoices from Kenya Port Authority, county governments, and Safaricom. And then finally, we have a few taxpayers who state that they have challenges with some taxpayers not being willing to receive via PIN. These are small supermarkets and petrol stations. Then I also ask you maybe to just quickly touch on this issue now that we have Teams, eTeams, and eTeams Lite all working in unison. Is it safe to say that a taxpayer who is on one of these solutions is compliant for invoicing and VAT purposes? Thanks, Susan. I think maybe we can start with you. You can address those two questions and then any frequently occurring question that you've observed in the chat. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mandy. I will look at the large taxpayers, that's Safaricom and probably KPLC and Nairobi County. So from Teams Operations, the point to take home is if you want to claim either VAT or income tax, the major important thing is to ensure you issue the seller with your PIN. Ensure your PIN number is captured because that's what I'm seeing. That's the major challenges most taxpayers are facing. I think that's why we're here. Like Safaricom, for example, if you need to claim, if you want to claim that expenditure, you need to notify them in advance. You need to tell them it's a business expenditure. You like to claim that expenditure. They need to capture your PIN and transmit the information to us. That is equally similar to KPLC. So for the large taxpayers and Nairobi County, I know some of the counties have come on board, and some still are onboarding to the process. So we are encouraging that ensure that your PIN is captured and transmitted to KRA so that you will not have challenges when filing, because we noted there was a challenge. It was not anticipated. We noted that most the Teams devices were transmitting. When you scan the QR code, it's valid, but most of the devices are not transmitting the KRA PIN. So we even we held a meeting with the suppliers of the devices, and we request them to ensure that their devices are updated and they're able to transmit the invoices to us. So if you encounter a challenge, you issued your PIN, and when you need to claim, you can't find the purchases. You need to go back to the supplier. We need to inform them that they need to do a credit note so that you can be able to capture they can be able to raise the invoice again and transmit the KRA PIN to us so that you can be able to claim that invoice. I think that is the major point to take home. Ensure that you issue the seller with your PIN. If you intend to claim, ensure that your PIN is captured and transmitted to us. Yeah, thank you, Mandy. What was the other question? And
Madam Susan, if you're in a position to, maybe I think now over the last few weeks, we've noted the new eTIMS Lite solution. So now we have TIMS, eTIMS, and eTIMS Lite. A number of taxpayers are asking if you're already on one of the solutions, are you compliant for purposes of invoicing and for purposes of VAT where applicable?
yes, Mandy, if you're already on Teams and you're not experiencing any challenges and the device is transmitting invoices, you're already compliant. If you are already compliant, you have the Teams device and it's working well, you are not experiencing any challenges, yeah, you're already compliant. You don't need to migrate to eTeams already. However, if you are experiencing challenges, that's when we advise that you can now retire the device you're using and then join eTeams. So now we have the solution, like maybe for the benefits of many taxpayers who have not been attending our sensitization. Now we are saying, initially, Mandy, it was only VAT registered taxpayers who were required to raise invoices using the ETL device. But as per the Finance Act 2023, all taxpayers are supposed to issue electronic invoices. That is why eTIMS was introduced. And I noted that the deadline we're saying of the 31st March is for non-VAT taxpayers. Kindly take note, the deadline is we have for migrating to Teams is for the non-VAT registered taxpayers, and the deadline for VAT was actually June 2023. That is when all VAT registered taxpayers were required to join eTIMS. We maybe for more information, we have even simplified the system. We have like the eTIMS, right? As Menda said, this is for taxpayers who do very minimum transactions, who do not have a VAT obligation. Now they can even sign up on the eCitizen platform. You can sign up on eCitizen.kra.go.ke, and then you can sign in. If you don't have a VAT obligation, you can sign in on that platform and be able to raise an invoice through that platform. We even have the USSD, which is *222# to enable the small taxpayers to also comply and come on board. I think that is it, Mandy.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Susan. I think that does cover, by and large, the eTIMS related queries. We'll bring you back on maybe in another 10 minutes or so, you and Zainab, to just respond to any final concerns that you've observed in the chat. At this point, let me bring back our presenter, Madam Grace Gadhia from the Business Transformation Office. Grace, where would you like to start? I propose...
I'm even wondering the same question.
With 1,700 queries, concerns, compliments, I don't know what we're up to the task.
Yes. We've covered, at least through the presentation, I feel I've covered a few of the, if not all, but maybe you can just give me an idea. There's a comment you had made.
Indeed, yes. I can just restate those. I've noted 4 key areas that maybe reviewing or restating them would be beneficial for our taxpayers. By and large, the case of purchases. So some taxpayers are noting that they have no purchases appearing. 1, they have duplicate purchases appearing or duplicate sales. They have erroneous sales or purchases. So these are scenarios where they totally are disowning what is appearing in the return. And then finally, I didn't see this much, but it came up where differing values on the invoice value and then the value appearing, the invoice value that they themselves issued, and then the value that appears in the auto-populated return. I'd say by and large, if we address those purchases related questions, we'll be fine. But tied to that, Grace, as you wind up on that question, maybe it can feed into the 6-month rule queries that we've been getting. Has the VAT auto-populated return come to amend anything of what the law states about taxpayers' right to claim input VAT within 6 months? And if so, how is that to be done practically? Yes, I think those are the main questions. And at the very end, if time permitting, I'll ask you a question about credit notes, imports, and changing information over the last 20 days for some taxpayers. Thanks. Remember, taxpayers, we have this recording available, a similar recording, I beg your pardon, available on the KRA YouTube channel, and we invite you to make reference to that today and tomorrow. We also invite you to very much attend tomorrow's session. It'll be our final session to enable you are effectively supported during this VAT filing period for the February return. And of course, we'll continue to engage with you perhaps just after either Easter break for more sensitizations, to share with you some of the enhancements that we've made, showing you how we've incorporated some of your feedback, because we've noted a number of recommendations and compliments and suggestions in the chat. So these are usually reviewed and escalated where possible to senior management for consideration. So Madam Gadhia, maybe those two issues of purchases and then the 6-month rule, and then we can work towards winding up. Thanks. Madam Grace, do we still have you on the call? I'm not able to hear you from my end.
Sorry. I hadn't unmuted. Sorry about that. Sorry. So I was trying to say, when it comes to, we've seen that issue where the invoice, the amount on the invoice, I was actually analyzing a case just before we started the engagement, and even explaining it on how it has done, it has been done, because we've pinpointed the source of the problem being at the point of transmission, where the taxable value is correct, but there's some alteration on the VAT amount. So we are currently investigating that particular issue. We are even going further to identifying the manufacturer who's actually brought this up, who's brought out this challenge for taxpayers. Because remember, and I need to clarify, and I just need to emphasize this, KRA has in no manner interfered with data. We are relying on what is being transmitted. So the exact way it is being transmitted is how we are auto-populating. There's a comment you had made before ETIMS came on board, that when they log in, like if I log in now, the CSV files I'm getting now is different. And if I log in after maybe 5 or 10, 15 minutes, again, it's changing. We've noted, I've actually done it practically with the taxpayer's profile, who was able to give me the credentials and login. We've noted that. I think it's because of the influx of everyone rushing last minute to just do the filing, and how our incremental batch has also been updating the system. So you're finding situations whereby even in the CSV file, when you log in at some point, your CSV files are not coming about with purchases, for example, but when you manually capture them, it is validating and it is going through. And that's what I was trying to say. Our system updates invoices at the stroke of midnight. So every time we go to sleep, the system runs in the backend and it updates. So if now today is 19th, the system will run again. It will update your invoices as we are receiving them, as they're being transmitted for both the month of February and of course also for the month of March, because it's incremental. So what will happen, because tomorrow is 20th, you might not have those invoices auto-populating in your return, but when you capture them manually, they will go through because they've been transmitted on our end. As long as transmission has been done correctly, with all the key features that I talked about earlier have come through, then it will go through, because the basis is on the transmission and not just on the auto-population. We've not created a new rule on the auto-population. The rule is on the transmission. Remember, the return, the basis of it, the aspect of it is on visibility. Do we have it in iTax? If we have it in iTax, then of course it will go through. So the issues on sales or the replication issues, the issue is, the solution is one. As long as you're disputing any sale amount, this is for sales, that is, you're disputing any sale. If it is the issue of replication, if it is the issue of wrong data capture, you inflated the sale amount, it is wrong. There is the issue that where we're seeing that the taxable value is, the amount is different, the invoicing, even on the checker. I've seen it practically. I even have a case practically. Again, if it is not a valid sale, then guys, read the only way to amend, and I emphasize, for sales, if we have 150 million for you, that is your sales. There is no way of us interjecting or intervening, because the minute we start doing that, then we start losing the quality of the data. The data is the one that is giving us all the information we need. And I think that has been the biggest outcome, or rather the biggest take we've received from the auto-populated return, because it has brought a lot of things to the surface, and a lot of things in terms of configuration, and well, in terms of the providers or manufacturers, we need to, that we're going back to the drawing board and having discussions with them. And then let me just let me give you different scenarios. Why Another reason why we can't intervene, we have scenarios where taxpayers have issued invoices, but you can imagine transmission is not being done by their manufacturer because they've not paid an annual fee. In such a situation, if you ask KRA to intervene, first of all, we cannot intervene, because what we realized, because we had a sit down, or rather, teams had a sit down with one of the manufacturers, and what came to the surface is, before you enter into you're provided with that device, a contract is signed. Those terms and conditions are in your contract, such that the provider is able to charge a maintenance fee, for lack of a better word, every year. So as long as you've not paid it, then what is happening? Your transactions are being held a hostage. So in such a situation, even if you were to ask KRA to intervene, how do we intervene? A contractual agreement was entered. KRA is not a third party in it. It is between you and the manufacturer. So we cannot intervene. And that's why, as much as there's an outcry for us to manually introduce these purchases, or in terms of sales, reducing the sales, that intervention cannot come from KRA. It needs to start from the source, go back to the source. We need to nip it at where it is, fix the issue where it is, because the temporary fixes will not really cure anything. And we are looking at progress. We are looking at how do we move forward. This is our reality. This auto-populated return is here to stay. It is the new norm. It is our new reality. Change is hard for everyone. And what we are all experiencing is that adapting to the change. And that is where we are at. In other scenarios, we've seen a seller directly telling a client that they will not transmit their transactions until they pay. Again, hostage situations. Again, how as KRA do we intervene? And I think, as much as we understand and we feel your pain areas, we need to go back and sit down. I actually commend any taxpayer who's come forth and said, Grace, yes, there's a problem in the configuration. Yes, we saw it. It is bad. And I've seen a lot of comments talking about, they issued a credit note, but on their sales, it's captured as it's come in as an original invoice. I had a similar case in the morning when I was diagnosing, or rather checking in the database. When we looked at those invoices, all of them were transmitted as an original invoice, not as a credit note. You intent, even the fiscal invoice that you gave to your client was a credit note. But what was transmitted, again, comes back to the configuration. It is transmitted as an original invoice. Again, we cannot intervene. That has come in as a sale. It has inflated your sale. And that taxpayer was like, we own it. Our vendor actually agreed, yes, they made a mistake. The configuration has an issue. We've sorted it out. So now this is where we are at. Is there a way you can give us a solution just to convert? Can you convert for us these particular transactions into credit notes? We cannot. If we received it as an original invoice, that is how we will give it to you. That is how we will display it. So for places where we know we can intervene, or we know, yes, the issue could be on our end, believe you me, we have provided solutions, and we're still gonna provide solutions. Some of us will leave here very late today until we make sure everybody is well taken care of and everybody has been able to file as per what has been auto-populated. There has been a lot of also discussions in the market where they feel that no, this is KRA's problem, they need to fix it. So we are not filing returns. Legally, by law, you are supposed to file that return by tomorrow, 20th, and submit and make payment. So for those who know, their timelines have been constricted. I've even seen guys go ahead, make payment in advance just to have the money sitting in their profile, and then they'll do a set off come tomorrow after they've been able to do their filing. That is not a route I would actually encourage anyone to take, because remember how the law is, or how it is like aligned, section 28 to section 31 of the Tax Procedures Act. As long as the commissioner has this information available for them, then assessments can be raised, and that's not the route we want to take. We want to see you guys filing your returns. I know it is not. I genuinely feel your pain, and I've seen, because I've dealt with taxpayers as much as our office deals with officers one on one. With how the auto-populated has come in, we've been forced to deal with taxpayers on also on a one-on-one basis. So we've had those pain areas, we've had those conversations with big companies, middle SMEs, you name it. Those conversations have been had. And yes, now we fixed it, the configuration. No, so what is the way forward? So I know that issue of logging in, and there's an issue with the CSV file. Our ICT team is looking at it. I'm hoping we can also have sorted it out by end of day. But I know right now it's because there's a lot of traffic. Everyone is accessing the system. A few minutes ago, I saw that the portal was also experiencing a downtime. You're getting an error at the point of logging in. ICT is looking at it. They've already confirmed you guys should be okay. So we are on standby. We are sorting out issues as they come in, and we are supporting you as much as possible. So we support and back up the auto-populated return and how it is. So I don't know, Mandy, if I've been able to clarify the issue of sales, because the issues surrounding sales is on issues of currency, where the wrong currency was applied. How do we convert it? In terms of replication of sales, how do we sort it? I've already addressed that. In the issue of where the invoice, even in the checker, the amount is different from what has been auto-populated. Again, the problem is at the point, because I've seen it, the point is at the for the manufacturer. So basically what I'm saying, and that is our conviction, because we've seen it, we've done communication to the same providers, is the problem is there. You need to have a sit down and then just make sure your configurations are well done. If it is a matter of capturing the pin, you need to ensure that you align with you confirm with your provider where to capture that pin of the buyer, so that this issue where the your pin is missing, it does not reoccur. I actually applaud a seller who's come out and said, yes, those sales are in section B for non-registered VAT. The minute you see that particular sale there and that taxpayer is registered, then you know the issue is the pin of the buyer. So the fiscal document will show, yes, that is what is there. My pin was captured. But remember what I talked about, the mandatory fields of what is being transmitted to our end using the JSON file. So those are very key, very critical aspects. Where the fixes I've talked about, the goal is to do it today. We will be here quite late, and hopefully we can deliver it today. So basically, yes, Mindy, I don't know if I've covered everything. Let me know if there's something I haven't covered, because the questions are revolving around the same thing.
Indeed, Grace, and thank you very much for taking us through. Again, I think restating those points is key, and that at least for now, the interventions that KRA can do are minimal as at now for purposes of claiming, especially on purchases. But all hands are on deck to try and resolve the issue. So, Grace, I think I must appreciate you thoroughly for the last 2 hours. You've taken us through all matters VAT and auto-populated return, and in the interest of time, I think we'll try to wind up there. Tomorrow's session will be starting at 9:30 a.m. sharp, and I trust that we should be able, again, should the resolutions have taken place tonight, be able to at least have an update for you by tomorrow morning. Any potential enhancements that will have taken place to ease the burden of filing this time around, I will be able to share them tomorrow morning. Remember, though, we have recordings available on the YouTube channel, and we ask that you make reference to those today and tomorrow uh, to be able to file again with the appropriate and necessary tools. Thank you very much, everyone. Just before we wind up, I'll bring on Zainab for 1 minute or less. Zainab, good afternoon to you. Any items, pressing matters you'd like to address at this point? And maybe I can just request you to quickly touch on the deadline that's fast approaching this month, and then we'll wind up. Thanks. Zainab, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, Mandy. Thank you for this wonderful engagement. We're looking forward to other engagements so that we can be able to learn more about resolving VAT auto-populated issues. So we are here maybe to touch on the approaching deadline. We are here to support taxpayers on onboarding e-teams. So we kindly ask you to come forward and register for e-team so that we don't have a scenario whereby someone is looking for, they still have their manual ways of invoicing. And as we all know that we are approaching the deadline for 31st March, and we are expecting more taxpayers in our offices. So we just want to assure you that we are here to support you in whatever assistance you will require during the onboarding process. And we should be a bit tolerant and appreciative of the efforts that the team is currently doing so that we can ensure everyone is on board. Let us not wait for the last minute so that we can onboard e-teams. Let's do this. Let's make this a personal initiative so that going forward we'll have very minimal issues when it comes to filing of returns. And we also ask taxpayers to ask as many questions as possible concerning even the e-teams issues that might be of great assistance when it comes to filing of the auto-populated return. Since if we are not if we are not in a position to sorry for that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Madam Zainab.
Sorry. Yeah. So we are kindly asking you to adhere to the deadlines, and we should not wait for the last minute so that we can onboard e-teams, and ask as many questions as possible concerning e-teams so that we don't get to a point whereby the VAT auto-populated return is having issues with the credit notes, pins have not been captured, and that is a very recurring event, unfortunately. So thank you for your time, and have a blessed evening. Thank you, Mandy.
Sana, Madam Zainab. Thank you, Madam Susan and Maxwell. Just before we wind up with a brief presentation on Amnesty and reporting channels, Grace, please come back on to just give us an update for those taxpayers who are dealing with Safaricom and want to be compliant. Thanks.
So just a quick comment and just to firm up what my colleagues have said. For Safaricom, I've seen a lot of comments where they're saying that are unable to claim for Safaricom invoices. We've pinpointed where the problem is. Safaricom is how we are handling Safaricom is a bit different. We are receiving the data from them and inserting it in the system through ICT intervention. So we did that for the month of January. We've done that for February. So once we had done that for February 2024, Safaricom came back and said, no, we didn't give you all the data that we needed it to be available for the taxpayers. So that is why you're finding some of you do not have the data. If you have the data, you've auto-populated and you received your invoices for Safaricom and the data is wrong, then the problem is from them, and we've said we'll pick it up with them, because now once data is not correct, that's a problem in itself. But for the guys who are actually missing it in the auto-populated, you are actually in a category of the few who've been affected where the data was not available for us in good time for us to actually insert it in the system. And we've come to an agreement with Safaricom that once they facilitate the same for the month of March, they will also give us the data that was not availed to us in good time for February. So you'll be able to claim it in March 2024. But unfortunately for now, for the guys who are missing data from Safaricom, you'll not claim it in February 2024. So I hope that comes out clearly. We are aware of the issue. And since they came and said, yes, we are the ones who gave you half of the information or half of the data, then we'll sort it out in March 2024. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Grace. As we wind up, I just want to notify our taxpayers that we take your complaints and corruption reports very seriously. We are always working towards strengthening integrity and curbing corruption. Therefore, should you have any corruption reports or complaints you wish to escalate to the authority or notify the authority of, please feel free to utilize any of the channels on the screen. And should you wish to do so without revealing your identity, we have a web-based anonymous reporting system known as iWhistle, which is available on iwhistle.kra.go.ke. It simply prompts you to create a login ID. So it gives you a unique ID number, and then you can proceed to make your report on all aspects of the authority, not just the domestic taxes department. And then you're just asked to provide any relevant information that would go towards giving an officer within our investigations department the basis on which to make a strong tax investigation, recover lost tax revenue, and work towards nation building, and of course help foster a fair business environment for our taxpayers. Kindly note, we also have an ongoing tax amnesty program, which lapses on the 30th of June this year. It's an opportunity that doesn't come around often, whereby KRA is, or rather the law really is waiving and giving relief for penalties, interest, and fines associated with the period December 31st, 2022, going all the way back. If you have principal taxes for those periods, you're invited to make a payment plan at the earliest possible time in order to, upon honoring that payment plan of the outstanding taxes due for those periods, you can be granted 100% relief of your penalties, interest, and fines. So come forward at the earliest possible time. We have debt champions in all our tax service offices countrywide who can assist you to, if you're having challenges with the application, which is purely an online iTax-based application. But once again, thank you very much for making the time to be here this afternoon, for honoring our invite. For the last 2 hours, I think we've been able to gain a lot of insights on the VAT auto-populated return, where we are headed, which is ideally the web-based return by the end of the year, God willing, and all the efforts that KRA is putting into place to simplify our systems, leverage on technology to ensure that we also boost compliance and nation build overall. Asanteni sana. We wish you a blessed rest of the evening. Thank you very much, Madam Grace, Susan, and Zainab, and Maxwell. And also a very big thank you to the marketing team who have been live streaming this event, and God willing, will be doing the same tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a blessed rest of the day.
Thank you, Mendy.